There we go. No. Ah! Oh, wait. Are we? Come on, little app that could. Go. Why is it always Sunday? That gives me such issues.
Could be a lot of people trying to stream the NFL, affecting the bandwidth and stuff.
Oh, you know what? That actually might be why. That might actually be a good thing why we're going back to Friday.
Yeah, because I'm literally, people are talking about on Twitter on how Nickelodeon is simulcasting the, I believe it's the Bears and Saints that are playing today, and they're literally doing a simulcast with SpongeBob commentating.
Oh my gosh. Well, props to Reginald Barkley. He's getting work. Actually, really quick, Alex, you and I need to have an intervention with your sister. She has now resorted to watching freeform football. She is watching. Wow. She is watching the football. Well, her complaint is that there's nothing else on, so she just put on freeform and they're covering nothing but football. So I'm just like, turn it off. Your geek cred will go down.
Not necessarily. I mean, she could just be an iShield 21 fan.
No, this is true. Actually, I hadn't thought about it that way. And I do know that David Vito is cheering her on. So there you go. All right. So is everybody up recording?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's do 3, 2, 1. And I think I'm good. Let me just turn off any unnecessary apps. Okay. Greetings once again, my friends, from the red carpet of Geek News Movie Night. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. It is a night of the stars as we have our wonderful panel of fellow YouTubers, fellow content creators, fellow awesome people in general. If you guys aren't following their content, what the hell is wrong with you? And we'll start things off with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash. Romney, how you doing this fine Sunday?
Well, hanging in there as best as any of us can in the year 2021.
Yeah, I actually, you want to know the best thing I saw on Twitter in regards to all of the horrible events? I can't remember who said it, but he's just like, I want a refund on 2021. I had the 7-day membership, and I just don't like what's going on.
Yeah, a lot of the jokes I've been seeing have been basically like 2020 Season 2 and various...
Yep.
A lot of anime memes, if that's any indication of what types of circles I tend to hang around.
Actually, that was another one I saw, and I kind of was surprised that Alex didn't say it, was, can we skip to the fall, please? Because the winter season working out. And speaking of Alex, we have Alex the Shadow Blazer, who is joining us from the coziness of his anime abode. Alex, how are you doing this fine week?
I'm doing all right. I did inventory on Sunday and Monday, which is why I sounded really out of it on Sunday.
Sunday.
Yep, Sunday.
Sorry, I had to do it.
Yeah, but I've had the rest of the week off. I decided to kind of take a little time after the holidays to recuperate. I'm back to work tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've been back to work this entire time along with Romney, but also we are having join us I gotta go in by Paul Heyman. The reigning, defending, undisputed Geek News Movie Night champion, Shay Taree! How you doing, Shay?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing okay, aside from the Paul Heyman voice hurting my throat. Because you gotta get into it for Paul Heyman. You just gotta do it. And I had a very difficult time trying to do the Brock with Shay. It doesn't really work out so well. But yeah, you are still the winner. You have 2 movies now that have been winners, which makes us all feel silly. But it's okay because we're basically reviewing a Christmas movie, and it's 10 days into January.
That's okay. You can watch Christmas movies any time of the year.
You know what? I'd rather watch nostalgic Christmas movies right now just because of all the insanity we've had to go through in the previous week. But yeah, today we are doing Geek News Movie Night for Home Alone. And I'm just going to go ahead and warn, because a few people wanted me to say this, warn Shay of the bad decisions that she made, because we could have had Jingle All the Way, which means we could have had an endless supply of Sentai jokes from Romney. Go ahead, Robbie.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, the hero that the child character in that film is obsessed about, not really a tokusatsu-based design, at least not in my opinion.
For some reason, Jingle All the Way is heavily associated with Power Rangers, and I'm guessing it's only because Power Rangers was hot around the time that Jingle All the Way happened.
I mean, that is the craze they were kind of satirizing, was the whole
the
big superhero toy. It's kind of one of those that Power Rangers was just the biggest one, but if it was released in the 80s, it would have been Transformers or Ninja Turtles. It's one of those, it's more correlation, not causation.
But hey, we're here to talk about the original Home Alone. A lot of people were actually disappointed that we didn't do Home Alone 2. This is something I've noticed with the Home Alone franchise, is people don't really have love for the other Home Alones that have happened, but you have this weird divide between Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2 as to whether or not which one is the better film. I personally tend to be on the first movie, just because at that point the formula hadn't been used up, and they actually had a lot of really good stuff to do. I mean, don't get me... I can already feel Alex's eyes piercing my forehead. I get it. Tim Curry is in the movie, and he is amazing. But Home Alone 1, man, it's just loving.
I think another part of it, and this was something I noticed, because I had seen Home Alone 2 in bits and pieces, like way back when, more so than... This is actually my first time seeing the original in its entirety. And I think another large part of it, and this is something we'll probably get into later, is that Macaulay Culkin had a better sense of his on-screen charisma in the second film than he did the first one. The first one, they were kind of trying to go more just the typical cute kid route. He didn't quite have his established acting style until the second film. And I guess that's just more just because of experience, where there you get kind of a better indicator of Kevin McAllister's personality, especially in the context of what he goes through in the film we're discussing now.
Well, and another thing that, and I actually encourage people to go watch this, when I watched the Joe Rogan interview of Macaulay Culkin, we actually learned a little bit about Home Alone 2 compared to Home Alone 1, and one of the things that was very big was that Home Alone 2 was very much rushed, just because it was in New York, you had to film within this certain amount of time, you had to adhere to all of the rules and structure. And the original Home Alone, they didn't really have to do that. They could sit back and take their time. I don't think it was filmed in Chicago itself, but it was filmed and basically was supposed to be like a suburb, and so they could really take their time with it. And that's why it's more of a timeless classic than 2.
Yeah, and that's something that definitely shows in the film itself. That sense that they could take their time.
So really quick,
I think...
go ahead, Shay.
Oh, I was gonna say, for me, I think for me, why I like the first one, I like the first one more than the second one, and I think it's just because I grew up more on the first one and watching that one a lot more compared to the second one, and I don't remember watching the second one as often. Like, I watched the second one this year, I think, for like maybe the first time in its entirety, and like probably at least a good like over 10 years, maybe even over 20 years. It's been a long time since I've seen the second one. But the first one I remember a lot more. And I think because of the hijinks that are pulled in the first one, that with him doing that just inside of his own house is kind of what, at least for me as a kid, I was like, that's amazing. Whereas the second one, it was a lot more, like, it's a lot different, I guess, because he was in a whole different environment.
And on top of that, I would actually say, like, Home Alone 1 compared to Home Alone 2, and again, people are going to bite my head off for this, but it's just more of a Christmas movie. Whereas Home Alone 2, like, there are Christmas themes in Home Alone 2, but there's more of a concept of just throwing people into a new situation and still trying to make the formula work. And I actually think that there's a little bit more of a display of, like, consumerism and things like that in Home Alone 2 than there are in Home Alone 1. Home Alone 1 is just simply a Christmas movie. Like, it's based on those tenets. Home Alone 2 just has a lot of stuff tacked on to it as well. But let me go ahead and go through the cast here really quick so that people can get a sense of who we're dealing with. The first thing I got to bring up, film buffs love this duo. I don't think it's happened that often aside from Home Alone, if any. But we have director Chris Columbus and writer John Hughes. So at that point, a lot of people consider that to be a great duo of writer, producer, and director. I would tend to agree, as well as composer John Williams. I think that was actually a really great trio to put together for this particular one. As far as cast, aside from Macaulay Culkin, who is the focus of the film, we do actually have a pretty big cast of characters. We have Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern at the height of his popularity. We have John Hurd. We have Catherine O'Hara, who is returning, by the way. She is returning to Geek News Movie Night after Beetlejuice that Alex recommended.
Oh.
So we have returning Catherine O'Hara. We have Jerry Baman, who plays Uncle Frank, and even John Candy, who unfortunately didn't make it for the sequel, but he was in the first Home Alone film. So we have an amazing cast here, but obviously the one that walked away with probably the most highlight is the young Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. The whole reason John Candy is actually in this film was because it was a John Candy film where they discovered Macaulay Culkin. I believe it was Uncle Buck was kind of the first on-screen role, and they thought, oh, hey, this kid's really good at acting. Let's bring him on. And they thought, well, we brought him on. Let's bring
and the
John
cool
on.
part is that Macaulay, again, watch this interview with Joe Rogan, guys. You learn a lot of interesting facts about Macaulay Culkin you didn't know. One of which I didn't know was that aside from most child actors who just kind of walk in, maybe they get a little bit of classes here and there, his parents were training him in ballet. And so he had a lot of creative experience of stage blocking and things like that. So he, a lot of people give crap to child actors, but he, compared to others, he came in rather prepared.
Yeah, that's actually more common than many people might think, where a lot of child actors often end up in the industry because their parents were already working in the industry already in some way, shape, or form. And sadly, I know that kind of led to some hardships for Culkin himself down the line because of Home Alone, but that's a whole separate discussion.
So let's get into some fun facts really quick before we get into our thoughts on the film. I'm actually kind of glad that Romney brought this up, because it is actually one of the first facts that comes up. Without Uncle Buck, there would be no Home Alone. So the concept here, the idea for Home Alone occurred to John Hughes during the making of Uncle Buck, which also starred Macaulay Culkin. Always game to play the precocious one, there's a scene in which Culkin's character interrogates a potential babysitter through a mail slot. In Home Alone, Culkin has a similar confrontation with Daniel Stern, this time via a dog door. So without Uncle Buck, there would not have been Home Alone. As you just barely said. So John Candy is kind of essential in this because of Macaulay Culkin's role in Uncle Buck, which is kind of cool. Like, a lot of people thought that Culkin's first outing in Hollywood was Home Alone, and it's not the case. It was Uncle Buck. I didn't know that till years later when I actually watched Uncle Buck.
Yeah, and it's something I stumbled across because it was on Instagram. There are a couple of different accounts where they do like film trivia. Like, one of them is like Kid Cassidy Films, but there are a few others that they'll just put random trivia for random movies. And so around the holidays, you had people posting Home Alone facts or Die Hard facts. And so that's where I learned that.
Yep. The next fact that we have is the role of Kevin McAllister in Home Alone was written specifically for Macaulay Culkin. But that didn't stop Chris Columbus from auditioning more than 100 rascally preteens for the part, which was really all for naught, as Culkin nailed the role. So at that point, he had competition, I guess, but it sounds to me like they pretty much nailed it with him. Also, that Macaulay Culkin's younger brother, Kieran, I think is how you say it, Kieran Culkin is also in it. He plays Kevin's bedwetting cousin, Fuller. In other words, creepy guy with the Pepsi can. Or creepy kid with the Pepsi can. Dude, that kid, okay? That grin, we needed to see it in a horror movie. We need to see it in a horror movie. He enjoyed that way too much. Now here's the interesting part. Kieran Culkin, even though that was his acting debut, he has since gone on to build himself an impressive career. He has roles in The Cider House Rules, Igby Goes Down, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and recently in FX's Fargo. Holy crap. So I actually know this also from the Joe Rogan interview, that his brother went on to continue acting, whereas Macaulay kind of left the States for a while to go live in France, and only now recently has come back to do some acting roles.
Yeah, which makes sense, again, given what happened to him in the wake of Home Alone and a lot of the other stuff. He was kind of very much one of those child stars that it's very much one of those, oh, they expect you to be young and cute forever, and then it stopped.
Actually, to Macaulay's credit, he does look pretty good, considering. Like, I've seen some child actors who have gone over the edge.
Yeah, and it depends on a lot of factors in terms of the types of parents they had, which, again, Macaulay...
Actually, Macaulay had bad parents.
Well, yeah, like, it was more his father kind of did a lot of the really bad stuff, and that was kind of where a lot of the strife, but when you look at some of the more child actors who eventually just become regular actors in Hollywood, like Haley Joel Osment, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Elijah Wood, it's kind of one of those, they're kind of the exceptions where you can tell that their parents knew enough about the industry to kind of help them navigate it. Whereas Macaulay, although his parents had some experience, he wasn't quite as lucky, but because of the royalties he gets from Home
Did you
Alone,
say Hayden Panettiere? I think she's also part of that list, isn't she?
Yeah, she started out, but she didn't, at least in my opinion, she didn't really become as well known until Heroes when she was already an adult.
Yes, and now she has very reduced roles. So at that point, it's almost kind of a blessing for her in that regard. So the next fact that we have is that casting Kieran Culkin in Home Alone taught Chris Columbus a very important lesson. Since Home Alone, Columbus has gone on to become one of Hollywood's premier family-friendly movie makers as the director of Home Alone 2, Mrs. Doubtfire, and 2 movies in the Harry Potter franchise, if people don't remember that. He is the director of The Sorcerer's Stone and the Chamber of Secrets. After that, it becomes a little bit more of an adult franchise. I still make the argument he should have stayed on until Prisoner of Azkaban, and then start going for the adult tones, because he might have been able to make that dark, like, twist into the dark end of the Harry Potter franchise a little bit easier to go into, but that's me.
Yeah, that was just more because of, like, from what I've researched into what went on behind the scenes, the change in directors was kind of between both the studio and Rowling herself wanting to do a change, because they thought, well, it's too similar. These previous 2 films, while they're too faithful in the sense that, okay, well, it's basically just the book on screen. It didn't really add anything, so that's why they kind of went out of left field with Alfonso Cuarón, and then they finally settled with David Ayers, who then carried the franchise the rest of the way. Yates. So many Davids in Hollywood. Yeesh.
Did you say David Hayter?
He said Ayers.
Okay, for a second there I was like, did he say David Hayter? Solid Snake directed a Harry Potter movie?
You realize that David Hayter actually has directed like a bunch of films, right?
Oh no, yeah, he's actually a pretty well-established writer. So,
yeah.
Just to give people an example, X2, he was on the writing staff for it.
Yeah, and there were a few others. I know his most recent film. There was some, well, not his most recent, but the most recent that I know about, Wolves, was also one that he directed. It just had some issues where the American distributor wanted to cut it down to compete with to try to basically cater to the Twilight fan base, which he didn't really like. But that's Hollywood. There's always crap like that going on.
Yeah. So the next fact we have is Home Alone was a Guinness World Record holder for more than 25 years. So in its opening weekend, Home Alone topped the box office, making $17 million in 1,202 theaters. The movie maintained its #1 spot for a full 12 weeks and remained in the top 10 until June of the following year. It became the highest-grossing film of 1990 and earned a Guinness World Record as the highest-grossing live-action comedy ever domestically. It held on to that title for quite some time, 27 years, until the Chinese blockbuster Never Say Die knocked it out in 2017. Holy crap, that's actually really good considering how records can get beaten pretty quickly now. Like how many times has Titanic gotten trounced?
Yeah, I guess it's more how many times has James Cameron gotten trounced, because you had Titanic and you had Avatar.
Yeah, pretty much. So Home Alone's unprecedented success led to its title becoming a verb. So in his book, Who Killed Hollywood and Other Essays, the late great Oscar-winning screenwriter William Goldman admitted that the unexpected success of Home Alone contributed a new phrase to the Hollywood lexicon, to be Home Aloned, meaning that other films suffered at the box office because of Home Alone's long and successful run. More than one executive said to me, "My picture did 40, but it would have done 50 if it hadn't been Home Aloned."
Yeah. It also did spawn a whole subgenre of copycats.
It did.
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious one that comes to my mind, I mean, you've had, like, not Network, Remote, I think was what it was called. And then you also had stuff like Three Ninjas, both of the Three Ninjas films, which were weird.
Yes. Oh, jeez. Like, Three Ninjas was good for the first two, and then the rest are just weird. So I agree with you on that one. So Home Alone has spawned more than one sequel. Obviously, there's Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, but I believe they're up to
5.
5, yeah, 5 or 6. So it says complete with 4 sequels. So, okay, so yeah, up to 5. 3 video games, 2 board games, a novelization, and other kid-friendly merchandise, including the Talk Boy, which was an advertising piece from Home Alone 2.
I remember seeing the commercial for that.
Yeah, I had a Talk Boy.
You had a Talk Boy. My brother from another mother had one.
They also had Talk Girl.
Oh, that's right. They did have a Talk Girl, didn't they?
The Talk Girl was like a pink one. So I
Yeah.
think the Talk Boy was like a bluish color, and the Talk Girl was like a pinkish purple color.
Yep.
I remember the Talk Boy was more of a grayish color.
Yeah, it was like
a
gray, and then the Talk Girls that I remember seeing were like a pinkish purple.
It was gray, but there were like other colors because
They
the one
had-
I had was like a transparent blue. So
One that was really weird is there was a toy store in Idaho that had a black one. And I always thought that was a really cool design choice for the Talk Boy. It was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. Because if you want to hide that thing and catch people in the act, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I
So
remember the commercials for it.
Yeah. The McAllister home from Home Alone has become a major tourist attraction. So, located at 671 Lincoln Avenue in Winnetka, Illinois, it's still there, I believe, to this day. It's a 5-bedroom residence. In 2012, John and Cynthia Abenshine, I think is how they say it, who owned the home when it was used as one of the film's locations, sold the property for $1.5, almost $1.6 million. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
ridiculous.
that's what happens with films that are used in famous films. I mean, I remember that's the same thing that happened with the film that was used for the Amityville Horror, which
I just remember seeing that film as a kid and just thinking that house must have been a fucking mansion. Because, like, they tried to paint it out to be like, it was like an upper-class neighborhood, but that it was a smaller house compared to the other stuff. Because I remember when they do the shot of, like, Joe Pesci controlling all of them, you could see there are bigger houses in that neighborhood.
I always wondered, what did his parents do in the 90s?
Right?
What were their jobs? Like,
I think in the script it says the father's like an attorney, like a really valued attorney, like a senior partner at a firm, and his mother's like a fashion designer.
Yeah, because if you listen to the phone call she was taking in Home Alone, no, not Home Alone 1, Home Alone 2, I think, where she was actually talking about a fashion show. So they actually did have both very prosperous careers, which is it's cool. I actually like that concept. Kevin's treehouse in Home Alone was not part of the home rental deal. Kevin's backyard treehouse was not originally part of the property. It was constructed specifically for the movie and demolished once filming ended.
Oh, what a shame.
Well, yeah, that's actually a very common thing in Hollywood.
But you know those 2x4s went for a mint.
Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on if they demolished it and sold off the memorabilia, or if they just took it down and then repurposed it in other props.
That's true.
Yeah, because that's actually a very common thing where you use a location, you build whatever you need, and then you just break it all down because you can't just leave it there, because if you leave your trash on a location, that's a very good way to make sure that you're never allowed to shoot in that city ever again.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's crazy. And then, we were wrong. All of Home Alone was shot in the Chicago area. So, though the main plot point is the McAllister family is in Paris, while Kevin's home is back in Illinois. The production was shot entirely within the Chicago area. The scenes supposedly set at Paris Orly Airport were actually shot at O'Hare International Airport, and those luxurious business class seats they're taking to Paris, those were built on the basketball court of a local high school, the same school where the scene in which Kevin is running through a flooded basement was filmed. All right.
I mean, if you've ever actually been on a plane, granted...
Oh, the basement in question was actually the school's swimming pool.
Which I believe. Like, the basement, I believe, and the plane thing, I believe. I mean, plane sets are probably the most frequently built because trying to shoot on an actual plane is a nightmare.
Yeah, but no, the thing that's blowing my mind is like, dude, that school had a swimming pool. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, there are still a few schools out there that still have their swimming pools. They sadly, one by one, they've been demolished in favor of more.
Yeah, the closest one to us was.
My elementary school had a swimming pool, and so did my high school.
Yeah, it's just
the closest one to us was like Timpanogos and Midvale. That was the closest one.
Yeah, and I know this has just been this has just been a trend though in Utah specifically, where a lot of the high schools that have swimming pools, they've just been slowly getting demolished and replaced with quote-unquote modern architecture, in the sense that, they basically just look like, every catalog ever with no real personality.
Well, and I do know that a few of those, there's been a reason for it, because they've become kind of safety hazards. They haven't been maintained at all well.
Yeah, some of it's safety hazards, and the other part is just, we have county swimming centers that we use for the swim meets anyway, so rather than having our own pool, we'll just use the pools that we use for competition anyway.
See, all me and Alex's high school had was a rumor. You know that rumor, right, Alex?
Yeah, I remember that. That was the joke we'd always tell to the incoming classes. It's like, look for the third floor pool.
You got to be a really good kid to get into the third floor swimming pool. How does the water not leak through? It's super strong. I shit you not, in our high school that was the thing.
My elementary school had a school that served the city, and it was for our school too. So it was kind of like both. And then for high school, we had a swimming pool, but our swim team basically used it. I don't know if it's still there. It should still be there, I think, for my high school, but they used to use it for like swim meets and stuff, because we didn't have in my city a like county or like a city pool that was used. So a lot of the schools had swimming pools.
Yeah, because back in the 90s that was accepted. Like, if you wanted to have a swimming team, you needed to have like your own pool so that you could have a traveling team or things like that. Now they just do the county thing, which I actually think is probably better, because the school staff already has way too much to take care of without the pool, much less with one. So at that point, you could actually have better made pools in the county areas. But yeah, that's exactly how it worked. I still know a few high schools that fought tooth and nail to keep theirs in Utah, just because they did actually have a really good swim team program, and they had to get rid of them just because it was getting too expensive. Here,
I remember I had to interview some of them for a story at my job.
Yeah. So Robert De Niro actually turned down the role of Harry Lime in Home Alone. So Joe Pesci's role actually had two prominent castings for it. One was Robert De Niro, and the other was John Lovitz. They were both heavily considered for Harry Lime, except Joe Pesci swept in and just made the part his own. So bonus fun fact, the character is a slight homage to Orson Welles.
Yeah, another potential person that could have played either Harry or Marv was Jeremy Irons, and Al Pacino was also approached as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the only reason that Daniel Stern was being considered at that time, because it was basically he was getting hot up until Home Alone, and then he went white hot, because I remember he got like 5 or 6 movies out of it. So we also had Joe Pesci got all method on Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. In order to get the most authentic performance possible, Joe Pesci did his best to avoid Macaulay Culkin on the set so that the young actor would indeed be afraid of him, and no one would blame the young actor for being a bit petrified, as he still bears the physical scar from one accidental altercation. In the first Home Alone, they hung me up on a coat hook, and Pesci says, "I'm going to bite all your fingers off one at a time." And during one of the rehearsals, he actually bit him and broke the skin.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. Joe. Oh, Joe. I've heard that Joe's had incidents like these on a lot of his films, where he gets way too invested. So that's not surprising. Okay, so Joe Pesci wasn't used to making a family-friendly movie like Home Alone. Considering that Pesci's best known for heavy movies, or playing the heavy in movies like Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino, it's understandable that he wasn't quite used to the whole family-friendly atmosphere on the set of Home Alone. And he dropped a few F-bombs as a result. Columbus tried to curb Pesci's four-letter word tendency by suggesting he use the word fridge instead. I always wondered how that started. What the fridge?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, if you're used to cursing and then you're having to be in a family film, I mean.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. Joe was a comedian before he went in to do these mob movies, wasn't he? Or at least he'd done some comedy.
Yeah, at least in I think in smaller capacities. Yeah.
So at that point, all comedians were dirty. At that given moment, there really wasn't such a thing as a PG comedian, I think, in that time.
No.
Aside from maybe
even
Foxworthy, but even then, I think around this time, Foxworthy might have still been kind of dirty.
No, I'm not sure. All I know is that seems to be a trend, because didn't the dad that played Danny Tanner in Full House, he was a comedian, and he was very much of a good.
That's another good.
So he had to play in a family-friendly show, and he's like, I don't do that.
That is actually another fun Joe Rogan episode is watching him talk to Bob Saget, because you will get nothing but F-bombs from him. It's like, that's Danny Tanner.
Yeah,
this actually hurts my psyche.
I mean, when you consider that even people like George Carlin had to take family-friendly work, because people may forget that George Carlin was in one of the Tarzan sequels, and he was also the conductor in Shining Time Station, the oft-forgotten live-action counterpart to Thomas the Tank Engine. Although I'm one of the few people that also remembers, before George Carlin, it was Ringo Starr, which was weird.
Yeah, I think the only one that wasn't doing anything like that was, crap, I can never remember his name off the top of my head, but he, Brewster's Millions was one of his. He didn't. Oh, crap. He's like a beloved black comedian. But he never took any because he didn't like the concept. He thought it was stupid.
Just sometimes, though, and I speak as someone who both considered going into comedy, but also had friends who tried and failed quite catastrophically to get into comedy. It's not the most secure job to go into unless you
Richard
do
Pryor,
really well.
that was the guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I've had friends who've done open mic at, we have a comedy club here called Wise Guys for people who aren't from Utah, and yeah, it's kind of one of those, unless you knock it out of the park and consistently knock it out of the park, even then, when you're successful, it's not the most secure thing, which is often why you'll see these comedians take these family-friendly roles, because, well, you gotta eat, you need the money.
Well, and not only that,
Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, exactly. You have now these days comedians can be dirty and they can do PG stuff, and it's a lot more openly accepted. But the other thing that comedians will now do is also get into the podcast circuit, because tons of comedians have podcasts now. Yeah,
there's still some that still occasionally do the usual get cameo role in some family-friendly animated film because that's easier to work in. It's like, I just talk into a microphone, get my paycheck, and I'm good.
Well, and a lot of them it's because they're family men. So, for example, Bert Kreischer, I think, has done an animated film, and I think also Tom Segura has done one. So, yeah. In fact, that's a great podcast, Two Bears, One Cave. That's great, and yeah. So, next fact we have is on Daniel Stern. He had a 4-letter word slip up onto the Home Alone set. So, and it wasn't cut out of the film, he utters the word shit when attempting to retrieve his shoe through the doggy door. It's, I believe, I can't remember what trap that was for Daniel Stern. But yeah, that one is,
When he's trying to peek into the kitchen and then Kevin puts on the movie to kind of scare him away.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, fun fact that's somewhat tangentially related. Somebody actually tried starting a Kickstarter to actually make that fake mob movie into an actual film.
Oh yeah. Crap, what was it called? Angels
with Filthy Souls.
Angels with Filthy Souls, yeah.
And in the sequel, it's Angels with Even Filthier Souls.
Yep. I love it. So in real life, Harry and Marv may not have survived Kevin's brutal attack in Home Alone. BB gun shots to the
Yeah.
forehead and groin, a steaming hot iron and can of paint to the face, a flaming blowtorch to the scalp. The wet bandits endure an awful lot of violence at the hands of single 8-year-old. So much that neither one of them should have been walking, let alone conscious by the end of the night. In 2012, Dr. Ryan St. Clair diagnosed the likely outcome of their injuries for the week. While a read-through of the entire article is well worth your time, here are a few highlights. That iron should have caused a blowout fracture, leading to serious disfigurement and debilitating double vision, if not repaired properly. The blowtorch, the skin and bone tissue on Harry's skull would be so damaged and rotted that his skull bone is essentially dying and will likely require a transplant. I love it when doctors diagnose injuries in a movie.
Yeah, there's been a whole.
Yeah, there's a YouTube video.
Yeah, I think there's like
Tons of
more
them.
than, yeah, there's more than one where doctors have kind of gone and saying, "Oh, here's all these different ways that they would have basically died."
Didn't the Mythbusters do something with Home Alone?
I think they did.
I think
Yeah.
so. I may have to go look that up just for the hell of it.
I think there's like one YouTube video where, like, I think I've watched it now like twice, where it's not like doctors, so it's like kind of like this like robotic female voice that's kind of like saying where the injuries are,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
it calculates like how many like of them it would take to actually survive. So it's like you killed Marv 4 times, you killed Harry twice. Like that's how many bodies, like
Yep.
how many times you've killed them. So it's like it's hilarious because it's like,
Yeah.
wow.
Oh,
I
but
mean, that's kind of
go
that's
ahead,
kind of
Randy.
why. Well, it's kind of why there was that running theory back when the Saw movies were in vogue, where the running theory was that Jigsaw was Kevin McAllister all grown up.
Oh, I heard
I
that
did
too.
not know that. Is that really a thing?
That was
Yeah.
that was a fan theory for a while before they actually revealed in the movies who Jigsaw was. But that was based. But then it led to a lot of people thinking, "Oh, well, what if? Like, what if that?"
Oh no, it makes sense. It really does. So it actually doesn't end there. The ornaments that Marv steps on in Home Alone would cause the least amount of damage. Walking on ornaments seems pretty insignificant compared to everything else. If I was Marv, I'd be more concerned about my facial fractures. Fortunately, the glass ornaments in the question were actually made of candy. Yes, they were all candy glass. But I'm just curious with you guys. Have you ever stepped on a broken, like, Christmas ball or things like that?
Not with my
Yes.
bare foot, but I have stepped on them.
Oh, it hurts like a mother. It hurt. I didn't
Doesn't
step on
ruin
a
my
ball. I stepped on that little hook piece that they have, and
Yeah.
there's still like a little imprint on the bottom of my foot with where the teeth were. Ow. Hurts like
I always
Yeah.
said that Kevin McAllister should have put down Legos because nothing hurts like stepping on a Lego.
You are
Yeah, but
actually
that's-
right.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, they would have had to have paid Lego for the licensing. So
Yeah.
this
Well,
is
they
actually
still
a
had to pay
pretty
micro
budget comedy.
machines. So,
Micro machines.
and those hurt too, by the way. Those hurt like a mother as well. The other thing I've also heard from my mom was she hated when we had toy Transformers and then like the arm would break off and we forget about it. Those apparently are like the most sharp things that she ever had go through her foot. So yeah, keep that in mind. So here's the one that everybody's dying to know. The tarantula on Stern's face. Yep, that was real.
Ugh. Gives me the willies every time.
I'm just
I don't
opening the
know.
question up to the three of you. How much would they have to pay you to get you to put a tarantula on your face? A live tarantula.
$1 million.
Well,
Maybe
it
more.
would be it would be in the $1 million range. But at the same time, if you're in a John Hughes written film directed by Chris Columbus, distributed by 20th Century Fox, well,
You're kind of walking into that.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, at least you get the most realistic reaction
Yes.
to having a tarantula on your face ever caught on film.
Yeah,
I
Daniel
got
Stern
them
actually
how
admits to
long.
it. The blood-curdling scream was real.
But it was dubbed over. It was dubbed in later. He actually mimed the scream while
Uh-huh.
they were filming, so they wouldn't scare the.
Yeah,
spiders.
because I think he peaked the boom mic, and so they had to come in and have him dub it again. Oh my
Oh, they
gosh!
just didn't want it. He didn't peek it. They didn't want to like scare the spider, so
Yeah,
they
'cause-
just had him mime the scream.
Yeah, because if you
Oh
scare the
yeah, that
spider-
actually makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause if you scare the spider, it would also be a case of, oh, it might bite and, cause really bad stuff, which would add yet another reason why they probably
Well,
would be dead by the end of the film.
Wouldn't that spider have been defanged at that point?
I don't
It
know.
wasn't venomous, but I don't know.
Probably
I
not
don't.
venomous, yeah.
Yeah, tarantulas aren't really venomous, but their bites can still cause like swelling and other stuff like that. So it is
Yeah.
still one of those things where it is a hazard.
All right.
I'd have to ask them how long they were trying to keep that thing on my face and see if I could negotiate how long before I lost my shit.
To which their answer would be, until we get the shot we need. In which case, you would basically have to hope that they get the shot they need in one take.
Shay, at least
And
you'd
then
be thankful it wasn't Peter Jackson who would make you do 8 consecutive shootings.
Oh my god.
Because Peter, along with a couple of other meticulous directors, they go until they got it right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be worse. It could be, Stanley Kubrick with his record 108
Oh,
takes.
jeez. Oh, God. Wasn't that The Shining? That
Yeah,
he
that
did
was The
that?
Shining.
Yeah, because the actress that was involved in that shot now hates him.
Yeah, Shelley Duvall, and it was literally part of his... He didn't even need that many takes. It was just basically his way of effectively traumatizing Shelley Duvall in order to further get the kind of performance he wanted. It was a very, innocuous shot that wasn't even that important.
Yeah.
That's how crazy Kubrick was with The Shining.
So, the next fact that we got here is John Candy wrapped his Home Alone filming in one day. 23 hours to be exact. He was a regular in many of John Hughes' movies. But in here, he played the nice guy, polka playing, he was the lead guy of the polka band. And yeah, he finished in 23 hours, and the character was actually inspired by his character in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Most of John Candy's roles are inspired by that.
Yeah, either that or something he did on SNL.
Pretty much,
Or
yeah.
I guess Second City, actually. Yeah, he got up through Second City, not SNL.
So the next fact we have is Kevin's older sister is a judo champ. So 2 years after appearing in Home Alone, Hilary Wolf, who played Kevin's older sister Megan, landed the lead in Joan Micklin Silver's Big Girls Don't Cry, They Get Even. She also appeared in Home Alone 2. And that hasn't been seen on the big screen since, but there's a good reason. In 1996 and 2000, she was a member of the Summer Olympics judo team for the U.S.
Oh.
Gee, would that have put her right next with Rousey Romney?
I'm not as familiar with the history of the Olympic judo team, so I
think 96 would have been Rousey. No, but 2000 might have been.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up because I'm not as familiar with it as I should, with that sort of thing as I should be.
Yep. So don't bother trying to get your hands on a copy of Angels with Filthy Souls, as Alex said earlier. It doesn't exist. In fact, in the sequel they named the title Angels with Even Filthier Souls.
Yeah,
because they needed an insert rated R movie for Kevin to watch.
Yeah, and it itself is a reference. It's kind of a composite of a lot of the various other classic mobster movies, where it's actually the title is a play on Angels with Dirty Faces from 1938, which starred James Cagney. And that's kind of what the title is a play on. And it's just basically meant to just be kind of a send up to a lot of the film noir mobster movies that came out during the early 40s. Yeah, early to late 40s.
The other one that's interesting to me is Old Man Marley was not in the original screenplay. So the scary neighbor who eventually teaches Kevin the importance of family, he wasn't a character in the original script. He was added at the suggestion of Columbus, who thought the film could do with a stronger dose of sentimentality, which at this point I'm very glad they did, because and I'll get into this when I give kind of my thoughts. Old Man Marley is probably one of my more favorite characters from this film. In fact, I had to go look up his actor, who sadly did pass away in 2011. So I think it was Robert Bellows? Roberts Blossom. So rest in peace, Roberts Blossom. That was actually a really good role from you. So we also have the Lyrical Opera of Chicago benefited from the movie Snowfall. Did you know that the fake snow used in filming Home Alone was donated to Lyric and used in multiple productions? Yes, it actually was. So when Home Alone wrapped, the production donated some of the artificial snow they had created to the Lyric Opera of Chicago. It has been used in a number of their productions. So Marv was supposed to have gotten a spin-off, So if people remember Bushwhacked in 1995, the Daniel Stern movie, as a delivery guy on the run after being framed for murder, he was originally intended to be a spin-off of Stern's character in Home Alone, and he was on the run because of that. So that's interesting. And then also, this is the funnest fact as far as I'm concerned of this list. If you believe that Elvis is still alive, then you might believe that he is in Home Alone. No hit movie would be complete without a little bit of conspiracy theory, and in the case of Home Alone, it's Elvis Presley, who allegedly died in 1977, makes a cameo in the film. The king is alive and well, making a living as a Hollywood extra. Yeah, he was an extra in one of the airports, I think, is what the theory basically surmises. Is that Elvis is in, I think, the Paris airport. No, it would have been the one where Catherine O'Hara meets the polka band.
Yeah, that's the same.
Is it the Paris airport? No, because she would have been back in the States by then.
Not an airport in Paris, but that's in Dallas is where she is.
Yeah, she's supposed to be in Dallas at that point. So
I think she's in Scranton, New Jersey.
Oh yeah, Scranton. Oi.
One of the 3 or 4 suggestions that we can make. So with those facts out of the way, let's actually get into our thoughts on Home Alone. Starting with
Hey Adam, real quick. One more fun fact is I think it's just appropriate that we do have Home Alone, because one of my suggestions was Christmas Vacation, the National Lampoon film.
Which is actually Hughes.
That's how that is John Hughes, and that's also why Chris Columbus got the job to direct Home Alone.
Did they meet on Christmas Vacation?
Yes, Columbus was going to direct Christmas Vacation, but he walked off because he didn't like Chevy Chase, and so Hughes offered him Home Alone instead.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, that actually I like. Because here's the thing, like, a lot of people consider that to be kind of a powerhouse duo, is Chris Columbus at direction and John Hughes, who was considered just godly in the terms of production. Because at that point, he'd had, 10 to 12 blockbuster films at that given moment. I can't even list them all. I think all of the Ringwald movies were successful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had to have had like a majority of those, and they were all fairly successful. So that actually did work out. But let's go ahead and get into our thoughts on this film with a unique question here. What did you think when you saw it the first time compared to how you're seeing it now? And we'll start off with the reigning defending champ. Shay, how did you feel about watching Home Alone this year?
I feel like watching Home Alone this year, I liked it. Like, I still enjoyed it. I still greatly enjoyed it, like, as much as I did when I was a kid. Although now I do now see a lot of the, I think now I also realize just how much of a brat Kevin McAllister is.
Sure.
Because as a kid, like, when he would talk back to his parents, like, as a kid, it's like I'm not going to say a dream, but it's like a weird thing as a kid to see other kids talk back to their parents, especially the way Kevin McAllister did. And in my household, I could not talk back to my parents that way.
No.
But now as an adult, seeing Kevin talk to his mom that way, saying like, I, hate you guys or whatever he says, I'm like, Kevin is such a brat. Like, I would have like kicked that kid's ass. Like, I'm sorry. Like, as an adult, I'm like realizing that now as Kevin McAllister. And I realized a lot more of the like foreshadowing within the movie.
Yeah.
Like when the dad sweeps up the paper towels and throws away Kevin's plane ticket. Like, seeing that happen and being like, oh wow, like I didn't realize that as a kid that was in the trash can as a kid. But yeah, I still greatly enjoyed it as an adult, but I also still realized a lot of stuff that people question, like if the phone lines didn't work, like how were you able to get through to the police? Like, it was like all those little things of like, how is this not working? Or like how the cops didn't try to even get into the house to see if the kid was there. Like, it was just a lot of little things that I realized as an adult that I was like, yeah, I didn't question this as a kid, but as an adult, I'm greatly questioning this.
In fact, coming back to the temper tantrum, me and my wife, when we were watching this, because look, Home Alone just comes up all the time on Freeform, and so I actually waited until this last Friday to do my official viewing because I knew that it was going to be on TV a lot during the holidays, and I didn't want to like get inundated. But I remember like her and me sitting down during that temper tantrum of I'm living alone, and we just kind of looked at each other and went, we could totally see our oldest daughter doing this, and actually making it work in a weird way. And Alex, you know what I'm talking about. She could do it. That's creepy. So
see, I could have never, like, as a kid, like, I couldn't even think of trying that as a kid because I knew my mom just, like, would not have it, or she would have, like, I would have, you know, gotten a backhand.
Yep.
Or definitely would have gotten, like, a whooping, like, if I tried to talk back to her that kind of way. But as an adult, I was like, Kevin McAllister's a brat. Like, I was just like, I do not like his attitude. I see why his family kind of was the way they were with him, but I still kind of felt bad. I still hated Buzz. Still hated his older brother.
But Buzz was
like,
supposed to be a dick. Like, the funniest thing is
like
that
any older sibling, like anybody who has an older sibling is like, like my older sibling could.
Well, and especially since, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin is the youngest of his family. So at that point, all of the older siblings just look like absolute dicks. To Kevin, just because they, you know, he is the little nuisance. But Buzz specifically had to be that, because a lot of them, if you look at the sisterly roles specifically now, it's just okay. They're being sisters at that given moment, but Buzz had to be like the one that was a dick, absolute dick.
Yeah.
And actually, in my opinion, he's not that dickish in Home Alone 1. He is instead more of a dick in Home Alone 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
Home Alone 2, he definitely was.
Because he got the whole court scene in that, and that paints him out to be so much more of a dick.
It was just,
dude, who is that actor? I swear he was in Parker Lewis or something like that. Because I know I've seen him after Home Alone, but how many siblings did Kevin have? Like,
he had 4.
Yeah,
okay, so it was
and then he had like the cousins that were there as well.
So yeah, 5 kids with his original family.
It's a house full of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was.
Yeah, a big house like that makes sense.
My fiance and I was watching it, and we're just like, why are all these people in their house? Like, they couldn't have just all traveled. Like, what was the point of driving to their house in Chicago to get on the plane to go to Paris? Like, you couldn't, like, I don't know where your siblings, like where your cousins is from, but y'all didn't have an airport.
Actually,
save on airfare.
The film explains it. Okay, so I didn't know this, but somebody had to point it out to me. In the 90s, there was a stereotype that people who lived in Ohio were cheapskates. And so the Uncle Frank character is from Ohio.
He's a cheapskate.
An absolute cheapskate. And so at that point, that's why they're there, is because they wanted to point out family from Ohio, fucking cheapskates. And the way that they actually reassert this is, how many people remember in the plane he tried to steal the Shakers?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, cheapskate family from Ohio. That's the stereotype.
It was that I questioned when I watched it now as an adult. And I also questioned as an adult, me and my fiance, we were like, they all woke up late. We were like, there was no one just up or wandering around the house. Because I'm like, there was never, like, no little kids got up early. No one else set an alarm. Like,
well, especially with Uncle Frank's wife, like, she looks like that mom who has 3 alarms. Okay, are you telling me she didn't have any? Like, she had to have one of those traveling clocks.
Yeah, and then miscounting the kids, and them not noticing that kid leaving. Like, you miscounted, like, counted him, and then didn't see him walking off.
Yes.
And then weren't like, oh, wait, why are you leaving?
Well, and they actually try to paint it because they move his brother out to another room, and so at that point, that's why they forgot him, is because they didn't have the kid who wets the bed to remind them about Kevin. And even then, I just kind of look at that and go, nobody went up to the attic?
Like, crossed the street. No, the neighbor that crossed the street and was talking to, like, all the, like, the people as they were waiting for them to come out of the house, the airport people, and they counted that kid because his back was turned. Oh, and he was going through the luggage.
Holy shit, they did!
And then the sister counted him and was just like, oh, that's everybody. But no one saw this kid didn't just walk off. Like, and they weren't
Have fun!
Like, who are you?
Oh my gosh, Alex, what? So go ahead. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep things going.
No, go ahead.
Alex, go. What did you think when you first saw this film, and then now what do you think of it?
Really little kid when I saw this movie because we had it on videotape growing up, and I loved it as a little kid for sure, because the comedic, cartoony slapstick violence I thought was always really funny.
That was definitely the
growing up.
selling point of the trailer.
Yeah, so I just remember really loving this movie growing up. And I still love it today as an adult. I can look past any little minor plot holes or whatever, just because I think, it works and it makes sense for the context of the movie.
Yeah.
And certainly when the movie was made, 1990, very different world 30 years ago.
There's a reason that some cinephiles have made the joke of John Hughes logic, because you can notice that there are actually a lot of plot holes in some of his more famous movies. The Breakfast Club is the one that I know a lot of them, where a lot of the logic doesn't make sense. But it's just what John did, and we all accepted it.
Yeah, he wrote the movies the way he knew how to write them.
Yep.
And this is probably what really kind of kicked him off as the sort of family-friendly writer, was Home Alone.
At that
Before
time,
this,
yeah.
He was really like known for his teenage films, a little bit of his adult films too, like the Vacation series, but
Yeah.
really this was really the start of his sort of family-friendly line
What's
throughout the mid-90s.
what's funny is
before he
that
just kind of retired.
What's funny is the teenage films have had more lasting power than the adult ones to a lot of people. Like Christmas Vacation, that sticks. But I've talked to a lot of people just going like, if you were going to watch one National Lampoon's movie, which one would you watch? A lot of people say Christmas Vacation, and they don't go back to the other ones. Especially after Ryan Reynolds did Van Wilder, and so many people are like, I can't do National Lampoons anymore.
Yeah, of course, I would argue that John Hughes, the Christmas Vacation and stuff like that aren't really what most people think of when they think John Hughes. They probably likely think Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller are probably the two major films that are closely associated with him.
Yeah, Breakfast Club is obviously the one that goes to me, because, again, fight me, internet, but Breakfast Club to me is, as far as I'm concerned, is his magnum opus. It's better, in my opinion, than Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because I don't even think John understood how much lightning in a bottle he had in Breakfast Club. So that's why in a lot of cases it kind of stands up to me. Romney, your thoughts on Home Alone, like when you first saw it and also when you come back to it now?
Well, that would both be this time, because this is actually my first time seeing it, because again, I'd seen bits and pieces from the sequel more than I've seen. This is actually my first time actually watching the original Home Alone, because I remember it seeing. And it could just be because this film came out in 1990, 2 years before I was even born, whereas when I was a kid, Home Alone 2 was kind of the one getting a lot of advertisement when I was growing up, because that was the newer one on the block. And so, looking at it, I can see why the film holds up as well as it does. It is very much a classic comedy of errors sort of film, where you kind of see them plant the seeds early on, and you pretty much say like, oh, this happened because of this, and then that happened because of this, and then that happened because of this, which is the same thing you see in the National Lampoon Vacation and Christmas Vacations, of that sort of domino effect that's almost necessary for a film like this to work. And I look at this, I'm just like, okay, I can see why this film is as beloved as it is. I mean, yeah, it's a bit formulaic, but that's because it's the film that kind of created that formula.
So as we move on into like the positives of the film, I kind of want to bring things back to our first episode, because I believe it was Alex that brought this up. Because when we talked about Independence Day, you had said like you'd seen numerous TV broadcastings of it. And even when you came back to watch it for the podcast, you kind of admitted that there were a lot of scenes that you may have forgotten about, and you kind of lost the meaning of them through all those TV broadcastings. The same thing happened to me, I think, with Home Alone, because again, Freeform broadcasted the whole 25 days of December before Christmas. And so I forgot about a lot of the wholesome scenes that are actually strewn throughout this movie to try and teach Kevin why what he was wishing for was wrong. And that's a lot for a lot of people who have not seen this film. That's the premise of it, is Kevin basically, through his temper tantrums, like Shay pointed out, he wishes that his family would disappear, and he gets his wish. So he gets to live home alone for, 4 or 5 days. And so at that point, there are a lot of these really heartfelt moments strewn throughout the film that you don't remember ever in TV broadcastings, but they all have the one thing hammering home: the importance of family and why you should always want to be with them and why Christmas is important. And I just could not believe like all of the things that I was seeing, especially the one I forgot, which is in my opinion, like the moral of the story moment is in the church with the old man, and basically having like this moral of the story moment where we kind of bring it all home of family is important, especially around Christmas time, especially since he lost, like in a way, he lost his family, and then we go into the hijinks kind of thing. That's at least kind of my viewpoint on the matter. Like, there's a lot of stuff there that I forgot over time. But I also want to point out this interesting fact. Somebody on the internet actually did categorize, if Kevin McAllister were an adult, he would have incurred 15 separate law violations during these 5 days. And, like, granted, a majority of them are some form of assault with a deadly weapon, but there's also shoplifting. And as a kid, you would actually be penalized for, or the parents would be penalized for having a kid shopping alone. Yeah, it actually is kind of an interesting one. I'll have to link you guys the list of, like, all the laws that Kevin McAllister broke.
There's a great video on YouTube by YouTube channel Legal Eagle. He actually does a laws broken video for Home Alone.
So yeah, it's surprising, and it's not like a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's just because of how badly he abused Stern and Pesci. No, there's actually a bunch of stuff in there that Kevin did, but that's kind of my viewpoint on it. I actually like it more now as an adult than I did as a kid, because to me as a kid, the only thing that mattered was the latter 20 minutes of the film. All of the slapstick that was happening in the house. But now I appreciate it for all the stuff that leads up into that, and occasionally can appreciate all of the hijinks. Shay, what about you? Where are you at with Home Alone?
I still like it as an adult. It definitely makes me like wonder like if that was me as a kid. So like I had wondered to myself, like if my parents left me home alone as a kid at that age, and I like really thought my family had like disappeared, I would probably cry. Like, cause I would probably be like, I have no idea what to do. I would hide the entire time, especially if I knew like people were trying to break into my house.
This is definitely one of the plot holes. Is like Kevin should not have been so quickly to gain courage. Especially since, like, if you think of how the film painted him as a really timid kid, he should not have stepped up as quickly as he did.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, when you think in kind of that kid logic, there's probably that initial rush of thinking, oh, my Christmas wish actually came true, and that initial excitement that kind of came with it, where back in the back of his mind, he's not really thinking in terms of, oh, this is like an actual realistic scary situation. He's probably thinking, oh, this is just like a weird, it's kind of that where that reality of the situation just hasn't quite set in for him with what's going on. No. And so it's very much a case of where, considering that he thinks that the family disappeared because it was, a Christmas wish that he got, it very much is a case of, oh, well, he's not really thinking about the particulars because he's a kid, not an adult.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you're entirely right on that. Like, there are a lot of times where he is just absolutely, like, I think in a lot of cases, Kevin has to learn some harsh lessons. Like, a lot of the stuff that his parents were keeping him from doing, there was good reason for it. Especially in the Angels with Filthy Souls, where he's like sitting there just eating tons and tons of ice cream, and all of a sudden that scene comes up, and he's just, you could tell it's a kid watching a rated R film. He's got a little overexposure. He screams out "Mom!" That's his initial instinct.
Yeah.
I can also say, like, as a kid, like even now as an adult, seeing Kevin eat that ice cream, I've always wanted that ice cream the entire time. Every time that scene comes on, I'm like, I want that ice cream sundae.
Specifically that portion?
Just that portion.
Yeah.
That, exactly as it is made. I was like, I want that.
As a kid, I might. But now as an adult, I'd be like, ooh, that'd give me a sugar coma that would last forever.
Yeah.
I love ice cream. So for me, I'm like, all of it.
Oh, dude, like I'm totally into cold foods. So at that point, like I'd probably down a good portion of that. But I also like the fact that they also stayed true to kid logic, and he didn't finish it. Like he fell asleep in his chair during that. Alex, your take on Home Alone now? Like, has your viewpoint kind of changed?
Not too much. It's like I said, I see the movie for what it is. It's meant to be kind of a live action cartoon, basically. You know, the violence isn't meant to be really taken seriously and realistic. It's like a Three Stooges routine or something where,
Yeah.
you know, they just get a few bumps on the heads and they're perfectly fine and they can walk it off. Right? So, yeah, I love this movie still. I think
And I think the film pays its homages to the Three Stooges a couple of times, or maybe that was Lost in New York that did that, where they actually did have like Joe Pesci's character smacking Daniel Stern on the head.
Yeah, that's more Lost in New York. 'Cause
Yeah.
you don't really see that sort of thing in this one. It probably wasn't until after the original had come out where people kind of made the connection and thought, oh, well, we're rushing this film anyway. Let's take those ideas and roll with it.
Yeah. No. I'd agree with that. Okay, sorry, Alex, I interrupted you. Go ahead and go on.
Fine. Yeah, and I like the whole sentimentality that it comes. I mean, you do need that kind of with the Christmas movies to give it that warm glow charm of a sentimentality. So that's why I like the whole subplot with Old Man Marley when Kevin sits down with him in the church, and you see the ending scene where, you know, he's finally kind of making amends with his family that he'd been kind of disenfranchised from for a while.
Yeah.
So those are the things you do appreciate a lot more as an adult.
Well, and it's also just a really great way to say, like, you know, it's not just kids that make this wish, it's also adults that do. They also do stuff that wrecks their family and then they regret it. So I like the sentimentality of that as well. Robbie, your thoughts on this, since it technically is your first time?
Well, to kind of reiterate what I said before, it's clear why this film holds up as well as it does. It's a surprisingly solid film. And yeah, there wasn't really anything that really stood out to me as any sort of problems with it. I mean, yeah, there may be some continuity errors here and there, but nothing that distracted from the film as a whole. I can see why it is as beloved as it is. It's just kind of one of those things where I probably would have appreciated it more had I seen it growing up, but I can appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that I also want to point out, and actually this was from a listener of the podcast that brought this up as well, a special love for the cinematography of this, because they had a lot of really great scenes that capture things from Kevin's perspective. The ones in particular that they bring up are the grocery store scene, where Kevin's trying to buy a toothbrush and the old man comes up, and immediately the filming and the cinematography goes from that of a kid-friendly film to that of a horror film. They go out of their way to paint the old man as like the serial killer that Kevin is being told he is. And the other example of cinematography is the monster in the basement. So if people don't remember this, the furnace in the basement actually, because of Kevin's overactive imagination, would act like a monster. So they'd actually have like the grate of it open up like it was a monster's mouth. And I agree on this wholeheartedly. They found a way to be able to move things from a kid-friendly, happy-go-lucky film to straight-up horror, because that's the kid's perspective. This is a monster as far as he is concerned. And so at that point, great cinematography. I agree wholeheartedly. So with that, let's get into, are there any nitpicks that we have with this film? Any negatives that could be taken from it? Aside from bad parents, okay? We get it, bad parents. Bad parents.
Your kids, any kids trying to attempt any of these like traps that Kevin McAllister tries to set up.
And kids did. Kids actually did. I remember that being in our local newspaper for a while. Kids actually did try to set up like a paint can flying in front of somebody's face and breaking their dad's nose.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Hey, at least the nastier stuff wasn't tried, like the nail or the blowtorch.
Or the doorknob.
As far as we know, I mean, I'm sure there probably are stories where that sort of thing was done. They just probably didn't get as much news coverage, or if they did, that was probably so long ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, kids, it's very much monkey see, monkey do with kids. That's just an unfortunate fact of life.
Yeah. One nitpick I would say, but I'm not going to make it as a big one, is while Macaulay and I'm not going to say Kieran to Kieran Culkin to that extent, but Macaulay was a good example of a kid actor being able to do all the things that they needed to do, especially with him being the focus. But the other kids they're straight up child actors as far as I'm concerned. Like, a lot of them are very forgettable. They have their moments, and then after that, I actually forgot that some of them were Kevin's relatives, including dude from Adventures of Pete and Pete. I forgot he was in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Because he's like one of the older brothers of Kevin. So, by the way,
Yeah.
of all the kids that you had, one was red-haired? Oh, actually, never mind. Catherine O'Hara had red hair. For a second there, like, for some reason, I wanted to paint her as like a brunette, and I was like, huh.
Well, plus you also have to remember...
Genetics are a strange thing.
Well, the thing is that red hair is a recessive genetic trait. So even if you have a red-haired parent, unless even with both parents having red hair, the child having red hair is still very much unlikely. I mean, if all y'all remember your Punnett squares where you like chart out the traits, you're still looking at least with two parents who both have red hair, you're still looking at like at best 50% odds, and even then, but that's not nearly as odd because again, red hair is a rare recessive genetic trait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a girl when I was younger. Her mother used to do nails. She was a black girl, and her daughter had natural red hair, and they didn't know where it came from because her and her husband both have black hair or both have brown hair.
Really?
And it turns out that the mother's great grandfather had red hair, so it skipped like an entire generation. And their daughter, I met her daughter too. Her daughter's gorgeous, and she had this bright red, flaming red hair. It was gorgeous red hair, but everyone was always like, where did it come from? And they like looked back at like old pictures, and she had a great grandfather that had bright red hair, and that's where she got it from.
Holy
Genetics are weird.
Dude, I would want to see that picture just to see like a black man from way back then having flowing red locks. That would be cool as far as I'm concerned. Like that, I probably if he was like here in 2020, I'd be like, that's a dye job. But back then, heck no.
Well,
oh yeah, I have a cousin that has like auburn hair, like auburn reddish.
That I've seen.
Yeah, plus natural red hair and dyed red hair, it's very much it's a night and day difference. You can pretty much tell it at a glance. Even with the really high quality hair dyes you can get, you can still tell. There's kind of that artificial sheen to it.
Yeah. But there's like I can already see kind of the quiet that's happening with us. There's not really a whole lot of negatives to take from this. Even kind of the plot holes still we can forgive them because it's a John Hughes movie.
Yeah. Plus, every movie has plot holes in it. Like, if you really want to nitpick the movie apart, you can find little plot holes in there. But with that movie, I feel like there's really not a whole lot of negatives beyond like the attitude of the kid of Kevin McAllister as a character as a negative. But I feel like that's only a negative you see like as an adult, like if you've ever had a child that's like that. But as a kid, seeing a kid talk like that to their parents, it's kind of like cool in a way.
I remember when we saw it in the theater for the first time. The reason I remember this so well is we were at a rinky-dink theater that was close to us, and right when he's doing the whole temper tantrum and he's arguing with his mom, all of a sudden out of nowhere we hear a kid scream in the theater, "No, I don't do that!" And it's like, no, every kid does that. Yeah. Every kid does.
Plus, another large part of that suspension of disbelief, again, remember, Kevin's the main character. We're kind of seeing these events through the lens of a child, and that kind of it's kind of one of those cases where if someone were to effectively remake the film from an adult perspective, there would probably be like a whole bunch of elements added to the story that a kid wouldn't normally notice, because we're seeing a lot of the stuff happening through the eyes of a child with a hyperactive imagination. Whereas if this was made from an adult perspective, it would be a radically different movie.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing... Go ahead, Shay.
I was going to say that another thing, too, that probably was like a learning moment, probably for Kevin's mom, was to be patient, because her family arrived like 2 minutes after she got home. But she went home a whole roundabout way. When she would have just stayed in Paris, she would have got home the same time. and not have had
Oh,
to
yeah.
go around in circles.
But you kind of empathize with it. It's just like she's a freaking out mom. She's gonna do everything. I actually think that's a really great way to paint that character, because at that point, like, you know, as a parent now myself, I'd probably be doing the same thing, and I'd be just as surprised if my wife was coming through the door and it's like, well, if you just waited 2 days, you couldn't ask the mom to wait 2 days.
Yeah. People also said that was a great way that they painted the parents, like especially in the 90s, how the dad was kind of nonchalant. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand what's going on with you. Like, we didn't leave anything at the house. And it was like that mother's intuition was just like, oh my God, we left Kevin. And then like the dad's like, oh.
Correct me if I'm wrong. In sitcoms, that was kind of the stereotype, is like the moms were overly doddering and the dads were like, come on, we're okay, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
it very much was a trope of, and it's sadly still a trope in even some modern sitcoms, just luckily there's been enough of a pushback against it, but yeah, that's a thing.
Another thing I want to tackle on, and this is kind of an unpopular opinion, at least for a few people. I remember a while back, and I tried to dig up this video for this particular podcast, but a guy made an argument about how Catherine O'Hara's character is like the worst mom in the world and should be put in jail for forgetting her 10-year-old son, because I think they paint, no, he's 8. Kevin's supposed to be 8 years old, and he made a compelling argument about how she's like the most neglectful, because part of that was the justification of like, well, she has so many other kids to worry about, she's not even thinking about the youngest daughter or the youngest son. And I look at that and just, you know, I didn't agree then, and I don't agree now, because she's a mom of 5 kids, but I've met mothers of 12 kids, and every kid matters. Every single stinking kid matters. And so at that point, I don't know if I would fault Kevin's mom as much as a lot of people do. I think in a lot of cases, it is an innocent but really critical mistake that can be done. And frankly, in parenthood, crap like that happens a lot more often than you want to admit.
I blame the oldest daughter. She miscounted.
Yeah.
Her fault.
No, you're not wrong.
She miscounted.
Because she, like, stereotypical teenager, she had to be, what, 15, 16 at that point? So...
Yeah, she counted correctly. She counted correctly, but actually, no, I blame the neighbor's kid. If the neighbor's kid would have never came over, they would have gotten the count incorrect.
Hey, look, all I did was I went to Orlando. I don't know why I was... No, you were also the annoyance to the driver, and, like, you were a pain-in-the-butt kid.
Yeah, if the kid wasn't there,
Kevin
wouldn't have gotten left.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I could kind of see that point, but really, like, accidents like this happen a lot more than people want to admit. It makes me think back to the Full House episode where Stephanie and Michelle go to Auckland, New Zealand, just because, you know, Stephanie sees a cute boy, and it's just like, people don't realize this, and we used to have a neighbor who was a stewardess. It happens a lot more often than you would like to think. Kids like sneaking on airplanes. And they're small enough that they just get past every possible precaution you can think of. Granted, in these days, probably not. Yeah. But then, airports, people don't realize this, but back then in the 90s, airports were kind of lax.
Yeah.
You could walk with someone all the way up to the gate. Like,
Yeah.
I remember doing that back in like what, 98, 97 or whatever, just walking up to the gate, waiting for someone as they got on the plane and then leaving from there. You still went through security, but it wasn't like you couldn't go if you didn't have a ticket.
Well, the one thing that was shocking, the one thing that's shocking to me is how much airports have become shopping malls in and of their own right, because growing up here, like, you know, we were, I think at that point, considered a Delta hub, but a minor one. And we didn't have many shops or anything like that. All that was ever advertised was like all the skiing and the tourism stuff that you can do. But now I've seen our airport, like with others, just kind of mimic the whole, we got to have a food court, we got to have a clothing shop, we got to have all that stuff. And because like seeing that airport as a kid, Chicago O'Hare Airport, I'm like, they have a McDonald's in there? And that would have blown my mind. It's just like, only shopping malls do that.
Yeah, for us, one of our airports has a Chick-fil-A inside of the airport. So
yeah, that's actually like my first exposure to airports like that was when I went to Disneyland. So at that point, we went to, I think is it LAX or is it the Anaheim airport? Something like that. But
John Wayne.
John Wayne
has
International
a
Airport.
Carl Jr. LAX is like a weird circle. Like, I don't like LAX airport. I feel like once you're in your terminal, you're like kind of closed off from everything. But John Wayne is a lot more open.
But I remember just like seeing all these shops and going, wow, this is actually a really great idea, because what if you lose your toothbrush? You know, like you got to go somewhere to go get it.
It's going to cost you $20, but you're going to get a toothbrush.
Well, especially when you
at least in California, but
well, especially when you consider the security of the amount of stuff that you're not allowed to take with you in the airport. I mean, it's a very ingenious business idea. Like, oh, well, you can't take it from outside, but hey, you had to abandon your drink. Here, buy the drinks from inside the stores here.
Yeah, and at tourism cost.
Yeah.
So it blows my mind even to this day, just like as a kid looking at settings like that and going, holy crap. Even the French house that they're supposed to be, it doesn't even look like it's in France. They made it look all old worldy, but I think the premise was they filmed it in that same high school gym.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But see, this is the problem, guys. We want to be able to try and be unbiased in this regard and actually try to find fault in this film, but all of the stuff that's bad about it isn't necessarily a detriment to the film.
Yeah.
It's still getting its message
it made
across.
It fun.
Yeah, I think
because it made it fun.
And I think that's just more in response where with a lot of internet reviewers, people are expected to find someone to nitpick and stuff like that. And so when they actually encounter a film that actually, is good and actually doesn't have that many problems that actually take you out of the story, they're not used to it, and so they don't know how to react. I've seen that in myself, and I've seen that when people look at some of my reviews back when I reviewed films regularly, is that when they come across a film that is actually good, that you can't really criticize because there's no overt criticisms you can level against it.
Nope.
People's brains short circuit.
All right, so kind of to wrap things up, I also do have another listener question that is actually a good one, at least if you like F, Marry, Kill questions, but this is Home Alone related. So you have to picture yourself as either Harry or Marv, the Wet Bandits. Which is one incident or trap in the house that you'd be willing to take, and which one you absolutely wouldn't take? So you have to have like one that you're like, okay, I will find this acceptable, and one absolutely not. I had to think about this, so I'll go first. I probably would be okay with taking a paint can to the face. Probably. But the nail in the tar or the hot doorknob, unacceptable. Unacceptable, and I would never do that. Absolutely never do it. Let's start with Alex. What is one incident you would take and one you would not?
Incident I would take is just getting feathers glued onto me.
Oh yeah, damn it! I would.
That's the least. That's definitely the least of the terrible traps in the house.
Okay, and then the worst one.
The worst one, boy. Oh,
there's a lot, isn't there?
The blowtorch to the head.
Okay, all right.
That has to hurt bad.
Although it might be interesting to see you bald. I'm just saying for the record. It might be interesting because, like, I can't even speak now because that's pretty much me. Shay, what about you? What is the trap you would take, and what is the trap you would not?
I think the trap I would take would be either stepping on the Christmas light bulbs, not the Christmas light bulbs, stepping on the little trucks or whatever.
Yeah, the Christmas ornaments.
Oh, the micro machines.
Oh no, you're thinking about the micro machines.
Yeah, either that, stepping on that, and then what I would not take. Oh God, I don't know if this counts as one of them, but I know it's one that they got heard of. It's either the blowtorch to the head, the iron, or the crowbar when Harry hits Marv with the crowbar in his chest.
Oh yeah, that's
to
right.
kill the spider. Like that, I know Kevin didn't do that one, but I mean that still hurts.
No, in fact, that's the interesting part. Is like the spider was such an obvious trap, but Kevin never planned for it. It was just a trap of convenience. So I always
Yeah.
found that very interesting because like he didn't plan on the spider and then he just picks it up and puts it on Marv's face. So Romney, what trap would you take and what trap would you not?
Well, much like Shay, I would take the Micro Machines one because I know how to brake fall. So that's like slipping on something with wheels. I can brake fall. I can admit it. I've done brake falls like numerous times. So it's like
You can take a bump.
That's something I can survive. For me, the ones that I would not want, it's tied between either the blowtorch to the head or either the iron or paint cans to the head because, I kind of don't want a concussion or necrotic skull tissue because that
Was that supposed to be a hot iron?
I don't think it was heated. I don't think it was supposed to.
Yeah, I don't think it was plugged in.
Yeah, because it wasn't plugged in. I mean, they kind of imply it where it leaves like a welt.
Yeah.
But like anything involving, metal objects flying at my head at a very high velocity enough to, cause fractures and concussions. Yeah, no.
See, I'm kind of the same opinion. Like, I've broken bones before, so I could probably handle a broken nose, as opposed to necrotic tissue from a blowtorch to the head or touching a hot knob. That sounds to me like it's a lot harder to recover from, and it's a lot more painful. So, I don't know. That's kind of my viewpoint, too. But there you go. Final thoughts on Home Alone. What would you recommend people do with this film? Would you recommend them to watch it with family, buy the DVD? How would you recommend that people do Home Alone? For me, it's everywhere, so preferably watch it with your family, because there's something for the kids and there's something for the adults as well. And frankly, it's on pretty much every streaming service, I think. Well, it might not be now because of Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's only on Disney Plus now.
So yeah, Disney Plus, and then also, but here's the thing, also your local Walmart probably has a compilation of like the first 3, so for like $5.
You can get the Blu-ray of the first film for like $7.50.
Yeah, it's not that hard to find. Alex, what would you recommend for people to see Home Alone or not to see it?
Definitely see it. I'd even recommend the Blu-ray. In fact, I think this is like one of the first Blu-rays I ever bought. And this is like when Blu-ray was still kind of newish. It was a few years into the run now. But yeah, this is like one of the first Blu-rays I bought, and it has a lot of really nice features on it.
That was actually going to be my question, does it have a lot of good features to it?
Yeah, and it has a commentary with Columbus and Culkin together, so it's a very nice Blu-ray. I totally recommend it.
Yeah. Shay, would you recommend Home Alone to people?
Oh yeah, definitely. Watch it with your kids, watch it with your parents. If you're an adult, still watch it with your parents, watch it with friends. Yeah, definitely watch it, see it, and grimace when Harry and Marv get hurt.
Exactly, because that's how the adults react. All the kids are like, whoa! The other thing that I also want to bring up, because since Shay has announced on social media that you are engaged, did this dissuade you from having kids? Because nobody would fault you for that.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. It did not scare me away from having kids. There's other things that can scare me away. Home Alone didn't scare me away from having kids.
Actually, having kids can dissuade you from having kids. I can speak to that personally.
I have friends that have kids. So sometimes being around other people's children makes me not want to have kids.
Yeah, because sometimes
Only when they're bad. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
I don't like bad kids or kids that are disrespectful.
My only problem is when things get violent, because kids don't know their own strength. And so at that point, you could have some serious accidents happen. The best one that I can think of is my oldest niece accidentally bumped her mom's head. Like, she headbutted her head so hard she broke her nose, like a minor break. And all the daughter could care about was like, that hurt my head. And Pamela had, I didn't mean to say her name, but my sister-in-law had to walk out of the room, and a lot of us were like, she wanted to punch her, didn't she? Yeah, probably. So
my dad used to wrestle with my brother and I as kids, and if it got a little too rough, like if we got rough, he'd be like, hey, hold on, calm down.
Exactly.
We're just playing.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, hold on. Neither one of us wants to get hurt. Or like my brother and I would of course roughhouse and everything else like that. And I got a few bumps and bruises, bumped my mouth on a coffee table, and knocked out of some baby teeth. You know, it happens.
Crap happens. Yes, exactly. So, Shay, we have now done our review of Home Alone, and since you are the winner of this particular one, you get to pick the theme of the next Geek News Movie Night, which should be happening around April. So, would you like to tell us what that theme is?
So the theme is, I thought long and hard. So at one point, when I thought of April, I was like, oh, that's spring. At first, I thought of romantic comedy, but I'm not going to go that route.
Oh, good.
So I decided
Sorry.
to choose like mystery thriller, like a mystery or thriller.
Mystery
Or a
thriller.
mystery thriller.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting one. That's an interesting take that I didn't think of. So, all right. So we'll look forward to doing that in a couple of months. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for joining us for covering Home Alone. We hope you guys had an awesome holidays despite 2020 and 2021 and all their insanity. And if people want to check out the awesome content that all of us provide, Shay Taree, as the victor, how do people get a hold of you?
So you can get a hold of me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where I post twice a week. I post Wednesdays and Saturdays. And you can also find me on Instagram. It's at Shay Taree 2. And I'm also on Twitter, which is Shay, I believe Shay_Taree. So you can find me on either of those three.
All right. Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do people find you?
You can find me on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel, and I do anime content for it, so watch me there.
In fact, you just barely did the 12 Days of Anime, and you had, I want to say, 5 or 6 series that you recommended from this year, right?
Oh, for sure.
All right. Stephen Romney, how do people find you?
Well, you can always find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle on YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. I try to upload all three when I actually have stuff to upload, when my day job is not grinding me to the bone right down to the marrow. And if you want to see a more personal side of me that has recently become dominated with book reviews, you can follow me on Instagram at RomneyDoesArt, which, yes, I have done art on a few occasions, so technically the username is not a lie.
Yay!
And if you want to see, more of my activist side of things, as well as long-winded Twitter debates, you can follow me on Twitter at RomneyReviews.
Yeah, a lot of people were speculative as to whether or not this episode was actually going to happen, because it just so happens that we had Twitter, like all three of us had Twitter debates. And guys, no, not the case.
We get heated, but, it's just heat of the moment.
I still love you guys.
Emotions can run high, especially with everything going on.
Well,
No,
but here's the thing that I want to kind of leave as a positive there, because I got this from every single one of us, is that we don't have all the answers, and we're all trying to find those answers. And to me, that's the most productive thing that can come out of a debate like that, is if you still are asking questions, if you're still trying to figure things out. So yeah, there's no hatred here. I mean, for anything that might have happened, a lot of people were screaming to me that with Alex, I had to scream, "My dad works at Nintendo!" Because that's usually how we end arguments.
Yeah.
So I forgot to do that. I'm sorry. How do you do that on Twitter? You can't do that. And then if you guys want to follow
Caps lock.
yeah, exactly, caps lock. Or actually, no, you record yourself saying, "My dad works at Nintendo."
Or I'm pretty sure somebody's made a GIF that does that as well.
There has to be a Game Grumps GIF. I need Aaron screaming it, because he was like the best one I've ever come across. But if you guys want to follow my content, obviously you guys are on my YouTube channel, so please like, comment, and subscribe. I love having you guys here. I love having new people here, especially to the 11 subscribers I got in one day over this weekend. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And I know that at least 2 or 3 of them were from the RSS feed. So that's awesome. Welcome. And we do live streaming on this channel. We also do a lot of Let's Plays, but I'm also going to be branching into vlog territory, covering things like politics, maybe even some anime, because a lot of people want to know, what are your actual opinions on things like Attack on Titan? I might actually give you those opinions, so you guys can look forward to that very soon. If you want to follow the podcast, the first thing that we ask you guys do is to follow the RSS feed, which is geekynro.libsyn.com. That's where all the episodes are, including the finished G Gundam podcast. So you guys have all the episodes up on the RSS feed, minus the final review. That's going to be up in the next little bit anyway, so it doesn't really even matter. So that's where everything is, including new stuff that's going to be coming out, like this Geek News Movie Night. We're also going to be having some roundtable discussions on, you guys should have it by now, Kingdom Hearts 3, as well as Death Stranding, maybe even in 2021, about esports and things like that. So make sure that you follow that, because that's where all of that content is. You can also watch us live starting next Friday at 8 o'clock Mountain Time, so that would be 10 o'clock Eastern Time, so you guys can join us for that awesomeness. And we are returning to Fridays because the schedule problems that we had have no longer in effect, and actually it works out a little bit better. So join us on Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern, and we will have some fun talking the week's events in Geek. Specifically, next week, we'll be talking about the best and worst of 2020. And no, we're not talking about the frickin' COVID or anything like that. We're talking about the worst games and the worst anime and all that, because we have actually a variety of topics chosen by you, the listeners. So look forward to that. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter and Facebook under the exact same tagline, Geeky NRO, which you will get updates on when we're going live, the stories we might be talking about, or maybe even the stories that don't make the agenda, because a lot of people would just like us to talk about whether or not this person got cast for a film and whether or not it's a good idea. And also, if you want to contribute stories or be able to give feedback to the podcast, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Once again, thank you so much, Shay Taree, for joining us on this wonderful Geek News Movie Night on the Night of Stars, and Catherine O'Hara, because she's our only returning celebrity so far. That's just the way it goes. And yes, we are happy to have Shay on for another one. It makes me feel kind of bad. I want to be able to bring on more guests, and we love Shay so much that I don't think we could say no to Shay, but at the same time, I'd like to bring on more people, but she keeps winning. And I think the internet just wants you to keep winning. I don't think that's wrong.
What happens.
We'll see when it comes to April. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for enjoying this podcast with us. We had a great time being able to talk about Home Alone. And we will be back next week for more Geek News, reviews, and opinions. So for myself, for Shay, for Romney, and for Alex, we will see you guys next time. Are we still there?
Yep.
Yeah.
My podcast is, or my feed is delayed as hell, so we might still be streaming, but I might just have to do this. Okay. We'll have to just cut this off at the source. Well, still, nonetheless, that was fun, being able to hash out Home Alone. I'm glad that became it. I think we could have still had fun with Jingle All the Way, but